Okay, I'm going to read something to you out of Exodus, but we all know the story about in Egypt when he had the Israelites as supposedly as all the slaves or whatever, and Moses got a word from God or whatever to let the people go, and he went to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh was denying him to let the people go, and then all these weird plagues started happening. I'm not even going to get into God sent frogs and God sent bugs or whatever, and all this weird stuff to try and prove a point. Which, by the way, my confusion on this is if God knew, because God's all-knowing, if God knows that, hey, I'm going to send frogs, and if that doesn't work, I'm really going to do something. To me, if God's sending you a plague or a famine or a disease or lack of food or water to prove a point to get you to change your mind, wouldn't he just do the one that's actually going to work the very first time? Why would he keep doing it knowing that you're going to deny doing what he wants you to do? You know, like if I just think about it. He basically was sending something and it wouldn't work, and then he says, okay, well now I'm really going to do it. I'm going to kill all the animals. Okay, now I'm really going to do it. Yet God is all-knowing, and God knows what's going to happen. He knows that it's not going to affect Pharaoh and that he's not going to change his mind. But forget all that for a minute. Exodus 29, Exodus 12:29. God finally had enough. He'd been sending all these different plagues and famine and all this other stuff and bugs, and it wasn't working, so he got serious. It says in verse 29, at midnight the Lord struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat at the throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all the livestock as well. Pharaoh and all his officials and all the Egyptians got up during the night, and there was a loud wailing in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead. Now what you got to understand is, if you really read that, number one, people believe that God did this because he had to make a point. He had to prove a point. Pharaoh wasn't listening. So because this one man wasn't listening, the way God had to really get to this one man was by killing all the firstborn babies. That makes no sense to me. It even says he killed the firstborn of prisoners in the dungeon. These are people who were against Pharaoh. They could have been criminals, but they might have been people who said, I don't like this guy. He doesn't love God. You know, or I don't like this guy. I'm trying to help people, and he's telling me I can't help the poor, or whatever. You know, they get locked up for crazy stuff. So even the people who, and there could have been some criminals in there. Sure, I guess there could have been some bad people. But either way, God decides to kill all the firstborn of the prisoners, as well as all the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat at the throne, and the firstborn in the town, and even the livestock, as if the livestock had anything to do with it. But the firstborn also means that not only did he kill all the babies that were firstborn, but if I'm like 55 years old or 40 years old, right now I'm 36. If I'm 36 years old, but I was the firstborn from my mom and dad, I'm dead now if I lived in that city. It said he killed all the firstborn. So it wasn't just the babies. Again, if you're an only child, well, you were firstborn, you're dead. My sister would be dead right now. She was firstborn before me. She would be dead. For doing what? She's 37 years old, 38 years old, and all of a sudden she dies because the king of the town she lives in won't obey God on a certain issue. Makes no sense. If God can do anything, why would he have to kill babies? Why doesn't he just appear to Pharaoh and go, hey, look, you're going to do as I say, whether you like it or not? I mean, that's, to me, yeah, that seems like extortion or, you know, using your power. But aren't you using your power when you kill everybody? Isn't it the same thing? Can't you just talk to them and say, hey, look, you got to let them go? Or can't you just make them all fall asleep and then have the Egyptians, have the Israelites wake up They're awake, and all the Egyptians, they fell into a mysterious rest. And then all the Israelites got up and left. The keys were unlocked. Gates were opened. We hear other stories about people in jail, and there was a great earthquake, and they escaped. But on this particular incident, no, God decides to kill all the firstborn in the town. Whether you were the firstborn baby, firstborn animal, or if you're some kind of, you could be the firstborn, and here you're 50 years old because you were an only child or whatever, and now you're dead because you were the firstborn of that family. This is why I'm having a hard time accepting the Bible. Every single time something stupid, sounds stupid, I cannot defend it. I can't say, well, God has a meaning, and that was what he had to do. No, he didn't have to do that. It makes no sense to me. But anyway, talk to you later.